Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights. I was on the inaugural episode of Breaking Cardboard, John Newman's Sports Card Nation, his new show. The co-host was Corey of YamWax fame. Enjoyed that interaction. They were both asking me questions, and I was interacting with them. It was a lot of fun. Again, first show, promising, nice format. Delighted to be on that and honored to be on that. So thanks, sponsors, Topps Panini and Upper Deck, Heritage Auctions, Hugs to Scott Auctions, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Burbank Sports Cards, ComC.com, and Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. So thanks, John. Thanks, Corey. Thanks. There were some live questioners popping in during that show on a Friday evening. Encourage you to watch that or listen to it as your pleasure may be. I enjoyed it and look forward to doing it again at some point in the future. So here it is. Here's just some excerpts. It was an hour show, and this is just less than 15 minutes. But thanks, everybody, and see you tomorrow.
I'd just like to speak a little bit to that significance of the wall and your collecting. Is it influenced by your interest in connecting with?
In the sense that I can't put anything on the wall, Corey, that I can't tell a story about. And frequently the story, it could be who I bought it from or about that player or card or how I got it or why it's there. Yeah, there's a story aspect. So if somebody comes over, it's not like a silent vigil where you look at the cards with your hands folded behind you. You can't touch anything. You got to be very reverent. You can't say anything. It's not that. It's just a bunch of guys coming over and looking at the cards and talking about the cards. So that's been a lot of fun. And yeah, I'll probably do some more dinners here, mostly for the guys around here in 2022.
That's so great.
Is there anything on that wall that you've already, you don't have to say who or what, but really designated, like this might go to the Baseball Hall of Fame, or this card is already, I have this in mind for? Do you have any sort of, this card's already spoken for, maybe at a museum or even the National, which we were talking about? Do you have any cards like that? And my other question, before you answer that one, is how often do you rearrange it much, or is it kind of like set where you want it to be?
I'm definitely going to rearrange it after the next shipment I get back from BGS, which has taken a long time. John, it sounds like you're fishing for just you're the only guy that talks about mortality more than I do. But it's something we ought to think about. And what I did talk about that's interesting that you guys may push back on or agree is that I really came to the realization talking to Brad that maybe I need to be thinking about like a sports card executor, that my wife shouldn't have to figure out what to do. And I have some distinct segments of my collection, including the wall. No one would want the wall intact because there's too many personal things, but there's some valuable cards there. The Hall of Fame isn't going to want it. It's multi-sport. Actually, anybody would want it if it's for free. But so I'm still evolving that. The problem is if I earmark that certain cards go to certain people as a gift, then I have a risk of offending a lot more people than pleasing. So I'm trying to figure out how to manage that. I'm not the only one that has a diverse collection that has some level of value that would like to see it get into hands of people that would appreciate it. And maybe a lot of it would be sold. Some of it could be given away.
You're talking about these cards and their legacies, but I feel like legacy is important to you as well. And again, like you have decades more to go, but creating this podcast now, sharing your insight, your knowledge, I really respect the individuals you're connecting with. There's some people I really, respect, whether it's like guys like Adam, basketball card fanatic, Josh Johnson, I'm wearing the card ladder shirt, and Chris HOJ, these new leaders of the hobby out there. Our friend Jeremy Lee, who gave me a sticker at the National, which is a ton of fun. So connecting with these guys, it feels like bringing these content creators together, creating the content yourself is helping uplift the next generation of the hobby. I wonder if that's intentional.
My mission statement now is to influence the influencers. So I don't need to have 1 million people listening to the podcast, but I want the right people that can do something with it, that can take those insights and share them. Because I'm not going to connect with all these people individually, but John has an audience and we're on the same page about a lot of things. I'm sure he's influenced me. Maybe I've influenced him a little bit. That's the great thing about the digital world, that a lot of this content is free if you want to put it out there, and it can be easily passed along and virally.
Can we hear some stories about your favorite cards behind you?
I was in a small town in Ohio in the 70s, probably 76 maybe, put an ad in the paper, and a guy came to the hotel or the motel, whatever it was, responding to the ad that I was buying cards. And I was a professor at Bowling Green in Ohio at that time, so I was from around there. And this was outside of Columbus. And a guy walked up with a bunch of cards from the late 40s, early 50s. And in there were 2 Jackie Robinsons. Okay. Now I've since sold one. One's on the wall, as John can see. I sold it obviously too cheap. But the other thing I did, there were a whole bunch of 51 Bowmans as well. There was a mandolin there, which I still have, obviously, but there was a wax box, just the empty box. But the guy kept the cards in the box. And then he had a box of 50 Bowman too. And so there were these empty boxes. And I wound up just almost giving away the boxes, which are rarer than the cards. There weren't any wrappers in there, but I can't complain when I got a couple of Jackie Robinsons out of the other punchline is that there was also a Satchel Paige Leaf card in that same collection. So that's probably enough of me to give away some of these things. But that was 1976. And that was when people didn't even know about the rare Leafs. The Jackie Robinson was considered not common, but it was the main 49 card set of Leafs. And they didn't even know there were another 49. And there was a Satchel Paige in there, which I still have.
Wow. It sounds like everybody made out pretty well in the deal in the end, though. And
the guy that I bought from did not make out very well, in hindsight.
Oh,
I'm sure I paid him hundreds of dollars, and that may have been not an insignificant fraction. It was less than what the cards are worth, obviously, but they weren't worth that much then. You can't know that. What is that? 45 years later, they're gonna be worth 100 times what they were then.
Dr. Beckett, it's been decreed that your closing music of your podcast is the best music of any podcast in the hobby. Christina Thorson herself, the authority on these things, has deemed it true. But the one thing I don't know is, like, you have the person singing Minding My House of Cards, but at the end there's like a whispery voice that says something about we're doing tiny people breaks or something. I don't know quite what they say. What is he saying at the end?
You guys got out the microscope here and the audiometers or something. All credit goes to my awesome wife. She's the one that picked out the music. She said, this sounds interesting. And she believes, and I agree, that the last line of the song is, the man in the house of cards is doing all right.
Yeah.
It's a little bit understated because I'm doing better than all right, but it's a nice note to leave it on. It had a little bit of a positive tone without being boisterous. And I was floundering, because I thought, what am I going to, you have anything to pick from? And she said, here's one. And I said,
kudos
bingo.
to your wife. It seems perfect. And thank you for clearing it up.
Hey, I got another story for you then from what you said, because you apparently are a music guy. We had a trivia contest in the company, and Rich will remember this. And it was the whole company. Anybody could participate. It gets down into the final rounds, and I'm still there, and Rich is still there. One of the categories was music. We did the 50s music. Rich and I are both nailing it. We did the 60s music. Rich and I are both nailing it. We did the 70s music. Rich and I are both nailing it. We did the 80s music. I missed the 80s. I was working in the 80s, and Rich was listening to music. He crushed me. And I should have known I couldn't beat him anyway. But I used to listen to music, and then I started doing price guides, and I just didn't have time.
When was it that you started going full-time in cards? Was it as a dealer, or was it once you started at Beckett?
Actually, after that, I was a professor. It was always the side gig to do the books. And then I was a professor. Then I was a consultant. When I was a consultant, it was still a side gig. And then even after I started the company, I was still a consultant. So I was working, burning my candle at both ends. I was traveling around the country doing this expert witness stuff. And so that's why the first 2 years of the company, we didn't make any money. I didn't take any money out. There was no money to take out. And so it really never took off. And so I was feeding my family by doing a lot of high-powered consulting around the country and wearing myself out probably. And then after 2 years, then I finally turned down some of these consulting gigs that were very lucrative and thought, you know what, I'm going to jump both feet in. And that's when the company started really taking off. Not only did I give more attention to the company, I realized that I need to hire more people. And so that really helped because I think once I was full-time there, I thought, I'm full-time, it's still not getting done. I thought that would make a difference. But it just pointed out, I was close enough to see, hey, we need somebody to do this. We need somebody to do this. And we started on a course of hiring lots of people over the next 10 years.
When you first started full-time, then did you have this vision of it becoming this media grading conglomerate and hiring hundreds of people? Did you have that vision at that time?
No, I didn't want to hire hundreds of people. I didn't want to hire anybody. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. But the problem is, you couldn't not do that. It would have been irresponsible. It was a great idea, and I had a lot of the skills required, but I didn't have all the skills. I had the skills to do a price guide, but there's so much more to a company. I was just blessed with having the right people there at the right time. That's why I have so much sympathy for Tim Getch and maybe Nat Turner, any of these people that are leading companies. I think I was slow to hire. because I didn't want to be bringing people on. And if the thing turned down, then you'd have to ask them to leave. I hated that. So I was slow. And so our people really worked hard. And when I could see everybody's working hard, the work's still not getting done, or we were really struggling, we'd hire some more people. And we hired a person a month for 5 years.
Wow, so you're hiring a need, finding just great people, and that's what's propelling you forward. To me, I'm feeling like that's cautionary on looking at all of these new companies in the industry right now and thinking about a lot of things have to fall in place for them to be successful. And maybe to give it a couple of years before you fully buy into possibly a new grader. You can take your chances, but we don't know how these companies are going to pan out.
They've done the calculus, Corey, and they can't do that. Tim Getch is getting all this criticism because he has so many orders. Nat Turner said, we're not going to accept any new cards because we have millions of cards in the backlog. I've seen BGS's backlog. It's mind-boggling. So they can't really put the world on hold. And so they have to aggressively hire. But I'm at the National. I'm going back into the grading room with the BGS people. I didn't know. They were brand new. I'm sure they were trained. They'd probably been there for a year, but they were not there when I was there. I didn't really know them. The other thing I want to clarify is when we had our fast growth years, I'd like to say we went out and found a lot of great people. But in many cases, those great people found us. We didn't turn them into great people. I think we provided a good environment. But through just the network of our quality people, they found other quality people, and they found us. And I wouldn't run an ads in the paper to say, hey, in the Dallas Morning News, do you know anything about baseball cards? These were people from around the country that said, hey, I want to join your team. And we're saying, wow, yes. When can you start? Rich was like that. Rich is exceptional, but he had to move down from New Jersey, which was traumatic, but he survived.
What has surprised you the most about the hobby over the past 3 years? Also, what do you think about the emergence of non-sports cards over the past few years?
Let me relate them together, the two parts of those questions, because what's really happened in the last few years, maybe the last 2 years more than the last 3, is that there's been this movement of comparative pricing. When something gets really seemingly outrageously high priced, people say, that's getting a little pricey. I wonder what else. Instead of paying that for this, maybe I'll go over here. And so that's what's added another dynamic element, that people are always looking for what's going to be the next thing that's going to move. And so that's good. Consequently, non-sport has come on the horizon. People realize the quality of the non-sport, the Q factor, the fame and notoriety of the subjects of either these movies or music or TV or different celebrities. The followings are just as strong and just as passionate. And so I think that's terrific. It's made the hobby more fluid, that you're not just a baseball card collector trying to walk around with your want list for 56. You're opportunistically going to what you think is a good deal. And I love that. I think that's great. And yeah, non-sport's here to stay. If enough people go after something, the non-sport was produced in much smaller quantities than baseball. It makes it look like a good deal.
I was curious about this card because the lore on it is that they gave away something like 500 of these to individuals at the National. It's the Stadium of Stars card. Do you recall getting those and handing them out at all?
Not true. Not true.
Okay.
You want to know the real story?
Yeah, I do.
They made 500.
Okay.
And they gave them to, I'm sure they had some that they passed out of everybody, because Rich Klein got 500 and Grant Sandground got 500 and Frank Barney got 500. Each person got like a vending box of 500. And we did a lot of trading that week. And then I had some requests for them and things like that. But I still have a bunch. So they weren't passed out. Somebody had an uncut sheet. So there's 100 people that they did. And they did 500 sheets, chopped them up. And maybe there's some overrun. So I still have some. And I've autographed a bunch of them for people.
And that's what makes it fun. So sometimes when I see people complaining about those issues, I think it'd be great if we took the perspective that, like, if everything was perfect, this wouldn't really be in it.
The dynamic element of the hobby of people moving to what they perceive as being a good deal.
The man in the house of cards. The man in the house of cards. The man in the house of cards is doing